So I'm officially opening the 551st meeting of the Canterbury Regional Council. Once again, I'll just have to note that we're still in an international pandemic, which doesn't seem to be wanting to go away in any big hurry. So at some stages we'll be wearing masks, and when outsiders come in, we'll be wearing masks. So we'll have to do that. This is the second to last meeting of this triennium. So we're nearly at the end of the term. So there'll be one more council meeting on the 22nd of September. So this is the first meeting post the council meeting post the historic decision to enact the Ngāi Tahu representation legislation. So in many ways it'll be seen as a turning point in the pre-triennium to when we'll have two elected Ngāi Tahu representatives at the table. So just noting that the report on 8.9 has been withdrawn from the agenda today on the advice of the CEO. I'd like to ask Timatanga Yayan Cranwell if he would like to start the meeting with a mihi whakatau. Over to you, please, Yayan.
Tēnā koe e te rangatira Jenny. Tēnā e te ruru, te koukou mai nei ki haima, hiti ki haima, raka tūpoka nui o te ruru, te reko, hepo, he ao, kawa, te tihaiwa, mauri ora, ko te mehe tuatai ki te rokarawa, nōna na timataka, nōna na whakamutunga, kaori ino ana hoki, nāna, katoa e manaki I tiaki I ka wā katoa. Ka huri au ki a rātou kōhea ki te pō, moi mai rā hoki, oki mai. Ka huri taku aro ki roto ehu, roto iti, ki te rakatira o te mātou raka, ko tā Noble Thompson, Toby Curtis, e te rakatira, moi mai rā oki mai. Nau I anō I tīmata tēnei mahi I te mātou raka I Waikanui ngā kura, I te reo Māori, I te reo Pākehā, rānei nō reira e te rangatira, moi mai, oki mai, tiraha, whakatā. Apationa tātou hono rātou kia rātou, tātou kia tātou, nō reira ki te hunga ora noho ana, I te kaunira tai au ki Waitaha nei anō te mihi kia o koutou, ki ngā manuhiri ki te haramai I tēnei rā, ki te kōrero kia mātou, tēnā koutou, nau mai, haramai ki tēnei ao huri mo te tiaki te wai, mō wai, mō kauri muri ake nei. Nō reira tēnā koutou, a tēnā tata katoa, ka huri ki te rākau kia Councillor Edge. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Yayan, Chair. Whakatakata hau ki te uru, whakatakata hau ki te tonga. Kia makina ki uta, kia matara ki tai. I hei aki ana ti atakura, hi toi, hi huka, hi hauhu, ti hei, Māori ora.
Mauri ora.
Thank you very much, Yayan, for your mihi, and thank you very much, Grant, for your karakia. Thank you very much. Apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Craig Pauling. Apologies from Councillor Megan Hands and Councillor Peter Scott. I'm not sure if you're going to be here for the whole meeting. Are you partially absent, or can you make the whole meeting?
Yeah, 12:30 probably, Jenny. Thank you.
Right. We'll just note that Peter might not be here from 12:30. No other apologies? Okay, they're noted. Conflicts of interest. I haven't had any notification that there's any further conflicts of interest, so that's good. Now, the next item on the agenda is number 4. It is the public forum, the deputations and petitions. And today we have two people, Mandy Neal and Jan Burney, who are going to come into the room, and they are coming to present a petition, but they're also doing a presentation. So thank you very much. And we've got the petition up here on the table ready for when they come in the room. They'll be here in a minute. Has everybody got the recirculated outline of the talk they're going to be giving? Because there's some changes to that this morning. It looks like this, the new one. So people online might not have that one, but anyway, this is an oral talk they're going to give, and I think they've got some slides, haven't they? Yes. Yeah, so they'll be here in a moment. So I'd just like to officially welcome Mandy Neal, and Jan Burney to the meeting. Thank you very much for taking up your time to come, and if you want to take this off while you're talking, that's all right with me. Councillors should have their mask on. Thank you very much for giving up your time to come in here and present to us a local issue and deliver a petition to us. So we're seeing this as a combined public forum with the petition that I've already got a couple table up here, but we can table it during your talk, at the end of your talk if you like. And we're very interested to hear what you've got to say. So it's a pleasure to have you here today. So over to you. Welcome.
That's what you mean?
Yes.
Kia ora tātou. For Mandy Neal aho. Thank you so much for acknowledging our presentation of the petition and deputation today. Yours is a really sacred charge. The integrated management of land, air and water resources, supporting biodiversity and biosecurity, providing for regional transport services, and building more resilient communities in the face of climate change and natural hazards. Environmental science and local knowledge underpin all that you are doing. Now, this statement is an underpinning of how we understand what your obligations are. That's what we've based our presentation on today. Te Reo o Te Aikakawa, Brooklands Lagoon, is a site of ecological significance extending from the mouth of the Waimakariri River in the north to Hayes Road, Spencerville in the south, and by extent, the dunes and indigenous plant communities along the western side, including the constructed Beacon Street tidal wetland. Over to you, Jen.
Thank you. Ate Marie. The lagoon, a tidal and coastal influenced water body through its connection to the Waimakariri River and Pegasus Bay, is included by the Ministry of Environment 2017 classification as an estuarine environment, a part of the Waimakariri River, a tidal river mouth. It is a receiving environment for several significant waterways within the Waimakariri catchment: the Waimakariri River, the Puakekenui Styx River, and the Kaiapoi River. Three small settlements, Brooklands, Spencerville, Kaianga, and the rural surrounds, are directly affected by all of these water bodies. Our communities are deeply concerned and need your support to listen to and address all of the issues. There is a big picture here and some big influences to consider. All of those influences must be appraised as a whole and not in isolation. It is clear that all of our area, its communities, people, assets and environment, needs integrated planning and regulatory undertakings to manage the interconnected tidal water bodies: the Brooklands Lagoon, the Lower Styx River, the Lower Waimakariri River mouth, and the coastal environment and waters. There is a requirement for the authorities responsible to work together in unison for the good of the people, rather than as separate bodies, for both the immediate and long-term futures, to protect and enhance the biodiversity of the area, along with consultation with those directly affected, our small communities. We appeal to you to address the earthquake damage, the sea level rise, the climate changes, the unsustainable catchment activities, to ensure both short and long-term sustainable outcomes for all of us. The biodiversity of this area is unique and magnificent. We need to protect and enhance the environments, its people, assets, and all living species. We need to do this urgently and collaboratively. There has been extreme and significant distress, concern, and unease over an extended period of time in our communities. We ask for an end to the uncertainty. Transparent communications and consultation with people are needed now. Respect all of the elements that comprise this community within our city. Our plea to you is to protect the site for future generations, to protect all our small settlement communities, and for the sustainable use and enjoyment of the area for the people of our city, today and tomorrow. We ask you not to abandon your obligations and responsibilities. Thank you, Amanda.
We want all of our decision makers to act worthily of your positions, to regain people's trust. We need an end to passing the buck, poor decision making, man-made issues, and the spread of misinformation from authorities. We require reported facts and witnesses' evidence to be taken seriously and promptly acted upon. Please value, encourage and admire our people. They continue to illustrate bravely the intrinsic nature of small communities supporting one another. Please hear and act on our petition's almost unanimous call to positive action. Please listen to and respect what our people are telling you and showing you. Ensure a good quality of life in the present day for all and attend to the sustainable well-being values for the people who make up our small settlements. Please offer our suburbs hope and support in your responses today. We ask you to read and accept this presentation, the deputation to the local council, and the plea for help from the people who signed the petition. It's such an honour to represent all of them. Mai rangi, kia papa, the land, the people, the spirit that binds. Thank you for accepting our petition. Please act on it, starting yesterday.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and I'll take it that I've just received the petition from you and we've tabled it up here. So thank you very much for doing all that work. Now, have we got any questions around the table? Councillor Elizabeth McKenzie, you're first, if you'd like to.
Thank you for your presentation. Can I just clarify before I ask my questions? The purpose of the stop bank obviously is for, the estuary and ecological reasons, but I also understand from what I'm reading that it also will have a protective effect on residences there as well. Yeah. So hypothetical situation. In terms of construction of a stop bank, would people be willing to pay a targeted rate for construction of a stop bank? It could be quite a high rate. It could increase the rates bill quite significantly.
Because we got this from ECan just last. Sorry, we got this from ECan just last week. What are my rates funding? Well, there's 10 things on that list. 10. At Brooklands and Spencerville, we're getting 3 of them. That's pretty appalling. So where are our rates going, if not towards protecting our properties and a stop bank? If we have to pay extra money, it seems a pity when our rates are being channelled off to somebody else at the moment and have been for decades. So that's my answer to that.
I would answer, does the rest of the city with the Waimakariri stop bank and other protections pay targeted rates? They do. And we do already, but we don't have it.
No.
My second question is, say in 10 years' time, when the stop bank's been put up and then washed away and replaced several times, and you're still paying your targeted rates, would you be happy to continue with that situation?
My answer to that is, what assumptions are you making that it's going to be washed away? Has the Waimakariri River along the northern banks been washed away?
I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this presumably sea level rise is a factor in this, as well as the flooding, is it not?
That is for the technical reports that need to be done and ought to be done, and perhaps already have been done with regards to some of those. And that's for them to answer and for all of us to collaboratively discuss together.
Good. Councillor Claire Mackay.
Thank you very much for taking the time. I'll take mine off as well so you can hear. To come in and present to us. And I've read what we were circulated with earlier and obviously now got this. I'm not that familiar with the area, but I did go onto Google Maps and have a look, and on the pictures that I saw, it was obviously post the 210 to 11 earthquakes, and obviously parts of that area were red zoned due to soil conditions and future risks obviously there. How much of this is due to that, and how many of these houses or the homes that of the 218 odd that you had notified in the, I think it was 218 or the 218 census, are impacted by the photos that you've sort of put onto the last page?
We're asking for an integrated management of all of the area and not isolating out certain parts of the area. All of Christchurch suffered through the earthquake damage. All of Christchurch suffered some form of subsidence. All of Christchurch suffered from some degree of land damage. We're asking you to look at this whole area as an area that needs care, as has been done to all of the rest of the city. The degree of government intervention with regards to a coloured zone, I don't believe has any bearing at all on it, other than it has now been passed ownership to someone else.
Thank you. Did you have a follow-up question, Claire?
I do. Would you agree that a large part of large part of Christchurch, particularly along the Avon River, was red zoned, and other than several houses which didn't, residents that didn't take the payout, there isn't habitation in there now. Does that not apply to the red zoned area in this area?
You're making some assumptions there that are maybe not quite correct, and that they are inhabited and have always been inhabited and still inhabited post-quake. Therefore, to what degree are those people not allowed the same rights as others?
Can I just say here, I think that probably the council can get a presentation with the maps and get that all explained to them. So yeah, so we'll go ahead with that once we get some maps up, and staff are very good at that, so we'll ask for that. So that's good. Yeah,
We are one community. That's the key to us, one community.
it's all right.
In answer to the question that you asked that we haven't yet answered, how many people who are affected, all I can say is, as I went door to door, over half the place, the residents, the dwellings, people must be seriously affected in large numbers, because almost all of them just said, oh, we know all about flooding here, show me where to sign. That was the kind of response I had everywhere I went, and 98.5% of our residents are represented in that petition. So it's a serious problem, widespread. Thank you.
I would ask ECan why a particular colour or zoning, and how that it has an effect upon how you administer your obligations and the living.
Yeah, okay. I think we'll just park that one, because we'll have to get some staff to show people what is actually going on out there, I think, better. Now, who was next? I think it was Vicky, and then Ian. Councillor Southworth, and then Councillor Mackenzie.
Yeah, thank you for bringing the presentation. And I've actually met a few people who've been affected by flooding in the past, so I do understand it's really significant issue for people. Looking again, I also jumped to Google Maps and had a look. And what I'm reading, I'm understanding that the concern is around flooding from the Waimakariri, but you also have the Styx River running through the back. So I'm wondering, does the Styx River also cause any problems? And what about groundwater?
The Styx River certainly has issues as well, and the presentation included the Styx River. The Brooklands Lagoon is receiving water for both the Waimak, the Styx River, and the sea, of course. So the Styx River definitely backs up. It's definitely affecting people in these areas, both areas, Spencerville and Brooklands. We have tide gates. The tide gates hold back the water, the flood waters. Then it's released at the low tides, and it's becoming more of an issue with the earthquakes. The land subsided, the bank subsided, and I guess the council, etc., have been naturalising the river, but that naturalisation is now encroaching and has been encroaching. The waters from there are encroaching into people's properties, onto the roads, and further out. There is no restraint. There are no restraints holding it back. Definitely.
So, I mean, in terms of technically, it looks like a very complex area to manage because there is water in every direction, and including rising, I would imagine, also rising up from the ground as well. And I don't know how much detailed work has been done, and that's something that it would really be important for us to look at. And so, I presume that's what staff would be coming back to you about is what we've done and what we've got already. The other question I had, I mean, the photographs you've showed look like how discrete houses within water ponding around the outsides. So has water already actually gone into properties, into living areas as well? And my thinking around this was around, there are systems that people I've seen in the UK have been invested in where individual properties put some measures in to protect their own property, but I don't know how often that's used in New Zealand, or if that's something that you have looked at independently as a community, or if
there are options. We had variation 48, and that variation 48 under the district plan and an RMA document goes back to 2000, and so that RMA principle that they put in there was that the newer sets of houses will be raised to a certain height for that protection. A lot of us out there have that protection. However, that protection was eroded away during the earthquakes with regards to the risk. So the risk has increased for us, even though we had adhered to under our resource consents, etc. So we have done that. We have not had any mitigation of the earthquake damage or land drainage to mitigate or ease some of the risk out here. We have just been ignored. One of the reasons we have been ignored, particularly in Brooklands and Spencerville, I will include Spencerville in that, is because they were relying on that red zone to perhaps make an assumption that they could increase the flooding in that area. From what we've seen in the last couple of weeks, in fact, a lot of the water stayed in the upper reaches of that lower and affected more Spencerville and some of the rural productive land up there than it did at the lower end. It's a very, very dynamic environment with regards to whether it's a pluvial or a fluvial event, whether we're having the king tides. And in normal times, yes, over the time, I've been there almost 40 years. And I have seen worse flooding than we have seen today. However, that was under a different scenario in that there were less houses there, as there are now post the earthquakes. So one of the reasons that it is less towards the houses is that there was mitigation put in via a swale system that we have in Brooklands. It's an important piece of the puzzle out there, that there is a swale system and can drain some of the water. We have that capacity now that a lot of the houses are gone, for that flat vacant land to soak up some of that water. However, we need protection going forward, obviously with sea level rise, with these coastal storm surges, to protect the lagoon and the entire environment around Brooklands and Spencerville. We need that protection, otherwise it is gone. If that sea keeps coming back in, it'll go back to the black maps that you may have seen, where the mouth is in a different spot, and that sea will just keep encroaching, and where will the next line of defence be? Do we want to keep the line of defence that we have now?
Right, Jan, I'll just pull you up there because I think you've answered that question well. There's another question from Councillor Ian McKenzie. There's also the issue of the secondary stop banks down the side of the Waimak that don't come down as far as Brooklands as well. So you've got that issue as well. So Councillor McKenzie, you have a question?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yes, I have. I do have a question, and it relates around about what targeted rates you pay. But if I can just say, as a preamble, flooding has become a major issue across the whole of Canterbury in the last 18 months. We seem to be having apoplectic conditions far too often now, and we understand the added challenges of sea level rise. And there's a national debate going on about retreat or protect. I'm a pragmatic person who rather believes in trying to fix things rather than run away all the time. But running away may be the best answer if you can't fix it. And I don't know the answer to your issues here. What I can say is that we're trying to revise our catchment funding model so that we might have the bank, the funds to address some of these issues. And we're also talking to central government about trying to sort out funding issues. My question, though, for you is, I think Jenny and you both said that you're paying targeted rates for flood protection now. I'm just wondering, that's at what quantum? Do you know what quantum you're paying? Is that? It's sort of a technical question.
But it's the same targeted rate that everybody pays for the flood banks on the Waimak area.
So they're paying targeted rates for that, but they're not getting the protection. Okay, no, that's cool. So we.
As Jenny has alluded to, we have not, one part of the requirement of variation 48 that there was to be the secondary stop bank. We have not got that.
So is there anybody else with a question? Because since this is my one of my areas and Tāne Apanui's area on this elected council, I have since the start of this term been asking questions and getting reports from staff, and I did have it on our plans to do a field trip out there. But the thing is, I'm really sorry, but what's it called, COVID, an international pandemic, has really interfered with that. But one of the things that I've pushed for, and as chair, is the establishment of a catchment committee, and Ian McKenzie and Yayan Cranwell are the co-chairs of that, and it's a very timely development because we need to be doing that, and we need councillors to be taking that active role, and indeed we are. So I would suggest that one of the things that comes out of this is that a field trip be put on next term. Anyway, that's my recommendation, and out of this also, Stephanie, the CEO, will write you a letter about what we're doing. I can also tell you that we've already had conversations with City Council from what the wording you've got in the petition. So we've already made sure that has happened at a council-to-council meeting, and also staff are talking to each other. So it's very good that you've come in and advocated. And, you know, I need to disclose that when I was at City Council, I actually managed a huge project that Jan was involved on out there. And one of the issues, of course, is the number of ratepayers we've got in that area to be contributing. But it's very serious with the Waimakariri situation. And I did just circulate a report to some city councillors that showed what's going on with the water content coming down the end of the Waimakariri River and in the lagoon. So there's issues for us to consider in our planning going ahead under our new freshwater plans. And also we'd like you to know that we are on the city council, so we're working together with the city council on the coastal, what's it called, Vicky? Vicky's on there.
Actually, I was just emailing you about that. The Coastal Hazards Working Group, which is so two of us, Timatanga, Councillor Lewis and I are on the Coastal Hazards Working Group, which is predominantly Christchurch Council city councillors, and then 2 Environment Canterbury council representatives. And yeah, it's formulating how to start working really around the city in vulnerable areas for coastal hazards specifically, rather than all flooding issues. Littleton Whakamutunga is the first community off the ranks. They have a community panel that's been pulled together, and we'll be working with technical specialists to, as a community, evolve sort of what the stages are, what the future looks like over the next 50 years or so, and try and.
I'll cut you off there, Vicky. So thank you very much. Look, we're just trying to say that we're not proactive. We are, but it's really good that you've come in here and presented today. And it is true that the flooding's getting worse all the time in all places across Canterbury, especially down our coast. But it's very good that you've gone around and talked to the households, because that's pretty persuasive for us. So you've got our word that we will be working with City Council around this, and we will be having further look into it. So thank you very much for giving up your time and coming in today. It's very much what the community should be doing, advocating the community space. So we're very thrilled to have you here. So thank you very much, and you'll be hearing from us. So before you go, we're going to pass a resolution. We want to say that we received the presentation and the petition from Mandy Neal and Jan Berg regarding agenda item 4.1, the petition, Brooklyn Spencerville, for the completion of the Waimakariri Stock Bank from the Stewart's Gully around the Brooklands Lagoon to Spencer Park Beach, right along that eastern side there. And we're going to provide a reply to Amanda Neal as soon as practical. Now, that may take a bit of time because we're getting near the end of term, but you will get a reply. So I'll move that from the chair. Who would like to second that? By Councillor Tane Apanui. All those in favour, please say aye. There being nobody opposed, that's carried. So thank you very much for coming in. Very good of you. Yeah, so we'll just help you out. So thanks. Right, we're going to move on now to extraordinary and urgent business, number 5. There is nothing on that section, and we're up to notices of motion. This notice of motion is on page 8 of 121, 112, I should say, sorry. It's a notice of motion moved by Councillor Vicky Southworth. Have we got a seconder for this notice of motion? I'll ask for a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Elizabeth McKenzie. I saw your hand first, actually. So now we'll, it's moved and seconded. Now we'll have some questions, or you can present, you can speak first if you'd like to, Vicky, and then we can have some questions if you'd like to do it that way. I think that'd be good. Over.
Yeah, so just I've written a rationale. I think this really says it all in terms of
I think you should go through that, please, because this is going to be on a recording. So I think it would be good to make the bones of that argument. Thank you.
No,
yeah.
Again, can't hold it there. I need. So we have nitrates in the post in our groundwater in Canterbury. We know that. There are other pollutants that affect our groundwater, such as pesticides, such as pathogens, which we can get an indicative test with E. coli testing. And private well owners are responsible for checking that the water quality that they're drinking is suitable to be drunk. But not all private well owners are necessarily really well understanding of that fact. Or if they do know, they may not know where to go in terms of the laboratory tests that they can have carried out. They're perhaps worried about the costs and they don't know what the costs are and so on. I sit on the Selwyn Wahara Zone Committee, and as the Zone Committee, we decided that we were going to try to provide some information for private well owners, having established that there was some concerns around the community about drinking water from some of these wells. And so we ran 2 events, and those events were incredibly well attended. And one of them, in fact, was so well attended that people had to be turned away in the end. Some people had not tested their well for years, and there were some results came up that there were concentrations. In this case, we were doing an on the day nitrate check, but also able to provide information saying you also want to look at pathogen E. coli and so on. Here's some information, a leaflet that was put together around well maintenance and construction, but also providing, I think it was 3 local laboratories that could test and are accredited for testing various pollutants. So that was a really, really well received event and information. And subsequently then the OTOP Zone Committee has also run 2 events. And again, well attended and well received, to my understanding, but Councillor Mackenzie can speak to that. But the concern that I have is that it comes down to whether or not the Zone Committee wants to run these. That's it. The Zone Committees are the influencer here. And yet we know that we have areas across the whole of Canterbury where we have private well owners, and there are areas where there's perhaps elevated nitrate or there's a risk around pathogens. And so it seems to me, and I'm a logical scientific person, that actually this should be rolled out as in a rational, well-evidenced way that says these are the areas where people are more at risk. These are the areas where people need that information, rather than it just being sporadic. That's one reason why I've suggested that we do it as a whole of area, organised, planned roadshow. But also, I think it's much more efficient for staff that when they've already developed resources for the 2 events that we've now, or 4 events that we've now had between the 2 zone committees, the resources are there, the lessons are learned in terms of managing the bookings and that type of thing. That information is current, but it's easy for that to be lost. So, for example, we're now onto a new zone committee facilitator, and so that information is quite easy for information to get lost in the system if it gets picked up every year or so when a zone committee decides to do an event. When the OTOP zone decided to do an event, it was quite short notice. Things got pulled together quite quickly, and it was a bit of a scramble, it seemed to me. This is a much more organised way of doing things. It's efficient, effective. We've got the information to share. So let's plan it. Let's do it in a coordinated, organised, efficient way where the areas that are most at need get that information in a timely way.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Southworth. Councillor Mackenzie, would you like to speak now?
Yeah, yeah. I just want to speak in support of this motion. It seems to me a logical thing to do. I sit on the Orari Temuka Upihi Pariora Zone Committee, and we were lucky enough that we had a really great zone committee facilitator who took this idea on board. We said, well, look, the other zone committee's done this, we really want to do it. And she basically, organised everything, and it was great. It was a really good way of engaging with the community, particularly in Temuka. And not just that, we got a new zone committee member out of it, and we also got a person who's now standing for the regional council. So a really good way to connect. And we're planning another 3 or 4 events. We're going around Waimate, Pleasant Point and Geraldine to do the same thing. And to me, this seems like it's a core thing. Drinking water is a core thing for our organisation, and these things should just be on zone committee calendars, just as a standard item on the calendar. So yeah, I very much support this notice of motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mackenzie. Is there anybody else wanting to speak to it? Councillor Phil Clearwater. Oh, before we do that, did anybody have any questions? You want a question, Claire? Councillor?
Yeah, so can I just ask you, Vicky, is this with a focus on zone committees?
That could completely be a way of doing it, absolutely. I certainly would love to think the zone committees would want to be engaged with it and be part of this. But I don't think that whether or not the local community receives this opportunity and this information should be dependent on the zone committee making that decision. But absolutely, let's get the zone committees involved if they're willing to and keen to. Yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions? Have you got a question? Anyone else? And then we'll go through to speakers then. Councillor Clearwater, I didn't ask you if you had a question, but I assumed you wanted to speak. What about you, Councillor? Speak. Okay, Councillor Clearwater. Councillor Clearwater, you next.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly want to support this notice of motion. In relation to the zone committees, as a member of the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee, certainly there's been a lot of concern about the whole nitrates issue. I think however, there's been a focus on the urban rivers rather than, I guess, really looking at the concerns in the West Melton sort of district. I think that, as councillors, we have seen reports very clearly that in fact the nitrogen concentrate is sadly increasing, and certainly in parts of our region. And so it makes total sense, as Councillor Southworth is indicating, that people understand what the nature of that, I guess, of the chemicals and the pathogens in their wells, which in fact is their drinking water. So to me, this is a very sensible way forward, so that we all have more understanding, and especially the well owners in particular, around where I guess the level, it is a level of risk and that people can take. I'm also going to be interested in what kind of treatment options might be available for people when their wells test at an unsafe level. But it's something which I think we've really been clear on at a wider level overall. And it's time, certainly I think this is a great way of getting this actioned. And I'm sure that the zone committees, and certainly the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee is one who would certainly be interested in following up this kind of community outreach.
Thank you, Councillor Clearwater. Councillor Edge and then Councillor Peter Scott.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Southworth, for bringing this to us. I just wanted to, in support of your notice of motion, just refer to the submission to the annual plan given by Mayor Dan Gordon on the 27th of April, where one of their items, item 6, referred to monitoring of water quality in private wells. And that was with reference to the Waimakariri Zone Implementation Program Addendum 2018, where the recommendations were agreed to by the District Council and Environment Canterbury. And it refers to recommendation 3.16, that Environment Canterbury, Waimakariri District Council and Canterbury District Health Board work together to A, develop a program for testing and reporting on water quality in private drinking water supply wells, and B, raise awareness of health impacts from high nitrates in drinking water. The District Council has been undertaking some well testing in the district, about 39 so far, and in their submission to the annual plan, they were reminding us of those recommendations and seeking further testing of about 180 wells so that they could get some good representative sampling of the contaminant level being experienced by people. And they referred to in their submission that this has a high degree of urgency because nitrate levels over the MAV are showing up in private drinking water wells at levels breaching the half MAV limit set in PC7 of the Canterbury Land and Water Management Plan. So although your submission or your notice talks about an information roadshow, there is clearly concern across Canterbury about some further action to assess that in more detail and have some good monitoring evaluation data to back up change if it's necessary. So I support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Scott, your turn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I'm not against this because the word investigates is at the top end of this, so I'm not against this at all, but I have some questions around it, and I don't need those answered, but my question around this is that our statutory responsibility is to ensure that drinking water sources are right in terms of communities. And when we get down to individuals, if we run a series of sanctioned by a regional council, so our regional council are involved in this rather than a third party like has been happening under these clinics, what's our responsibility there? My other question would be around the impending Three Waters reforms and the conversation that's going on within Three Waters. And you know, I'm not, as I said, I'm not against this. But, you know, are we moving from a clinic type situation that informs communities about where they are and what possible risks might have around their well water if they're concerned, to a more of a statutory role across the region? So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Lan-Fan.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair, and yeah, thanks to Councillor Southworth for bringing this. Yeah, I support this. Again, it's an investigation. I think the zone committees are a really appropriate place to hold this because of our joint responsibilities with our district and city councils. It's about us tackling these big issues together, so I really support that. And I think especially for Environment Canterbury, it links really well with our annual groundwater and drinking water risk maps, for which we're just about to update them in the coming week. So yeah, to me, it's just another step in sort of coherently making sure that all people across Canterbury sort of are aware of the risks and know what action they can take if there is concern around nitrate levels in their drinking water. So kia ora, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fan. Councillor Claire Mackay.
Thank you very much. My feelings are a little bit as similar to Councillor Scott has expressed here. In my earlier question of clarity, I definitely think that zone committees have the role to play, and Councillor Farmer's outlined why the fact that they're joint committees with the TAs. But not only that, I feel that I wonder whether we're getting outside the remit of our function as well, in that this is around a public health issue. And so what should our focus be? And for me, it's a focus being combined with the people, the public health, the TAs, in the community as well, if it is going to be. So this is not just something that we should be doing by ourselves. I have some discomfort with the complete wording of the motion, and that it's got investigated at the front, which is fine. I can accept that. But then it goes on after the triennium and basically tells us how and what should be coming back. So I would be quite happy if we could stop that motion at the word triennium, and then I would support it. And that, you know, for example, it could be just as simple as the flyer that we just had the previous speakers present with some information. And I would just like to add that pathogens is particularly important from a public health point of view. I've been in this situation where a family from Auckland stayed at our farm and one of our houses on the farm. 3 weeks later, our little one was in hospital with toxic nephritis, and it was in coli base. So, of course, the assumption was they got it from a dairy farm. And unfortunately, that turned out to be incorrect. But in the meantime, we went through the mill and spent lots of money to try and solve a problem that we work part of. But it does just show you that sometimes pathogens may be the most significant health issue.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay. Councillor Johnson-Uncle.
Thank you. I guess I think I will vote against the motion, not that I don't support the role that we have in identifying those issues. And as my role as the chair of the Ground Service Expert Review Panel for Central Plains, we have all that monitoring data that comes right through Southworth. So we are aware of the high nitrate, the issues and things that float around, the E. coli testing, all the things that happen. So I firmly believe it should sit within the CWMS and that I don't know that as a council we need to be investigating and elevating. And I guess for me, if the matter had been brought to the Natural Environment Committee, CWMS, and the conversation was had about widening that testing program within the CWMS, I would have been happy. I'm nervous that we have a council that is, I guess, stretched and stressed as far as people and capacity and a whole bunch of things, and that adding further work to it is a challenge. So, yeah, I will vote against it. I have no problem with us continuing to investigate, but think it should just sit within the CWMS and just be expanded and slowly rolled out through there. And again, I believe it's about us, I guess, advising of the issues, recognising those areas that we do have high nitrates or potential for E. coli or the like, rather than getting into the detail of it. That's where I believe our role is.
Anybody else? Councillor Arpanui.
I'm buying myself a little bit of voting time here by talking. Look, it seems that a couple of zone committees had the foresight to do this pretty well, and they didn't need a staff or a bunch of staff going away to investigate it. I do think this is a wee bit down in the weeds for us as a council. Not that I don't think it's a very important thing to do. My question, I suppose, would be to the CE, if she's able to answer what our capacity is. Okay, sorry. No. Apologies. In its current form, I'll be voting against. Thanks.
Anybody else wishing to speak? I want to say a few words. I'd like to say that community wellbeing is totally our job under the Local Government Act. These wicked problems and the community expectations of them are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I've recently been in touch with a family who are a long-term, well-established Canterbury family, and they had never tested the water, and they're absolutely shocked about the water. And that's about the third time I've been told that during a 3-year term. So I think that it's our job going forward to be brave, agile, and be strong advocates for our community. So I congratulate Councillor Southworth for actually bringing this up and putting it on the agenda so clearly. I think it's well done. And I'm really looking forward to what the staff say about it, because we've got great expertise in here. And I know they'll come back with a really well-formulated report around it that'll clear a lot of these things up. But I also think there's a good opportunity at the moment to work with the new formulated New Zealand-wide public health system. And they are very much required, as I've learned recently from the chair of that board, who's quoted in today's press, actually. But they're required to work with councils, and I think it's an excellent idea to work with the TLAs. However we do that, whether it be through the zone committee work or what, but we have to be assured as councillors, I think it's one of our duties, that if we know information and people's health is surrounding that we should do whatever we can to be accountable around that. And as we've already learned, these tests that you can use, the small watercolour initial tests cost about $1.50 each. And people are not aware of them, and we should be making people aware of them. So I'm waiting for the staff report. I'll be following that, and do you know that it's legally it's accepted. It's a convention that people standing for election in this term expect that business goes over the triennium. They do not expect that it stops and starts again. The business flows over the triennium so that it's a refresh of the democracy, but the business does not stop. And so I think it's quite appropriate to be forecasting this. We're not supposed to have stopped now, we're supposed to be continuing. And councillors coming on board have that expectation that that has happened. So I'm I'm going to vote for this, and I think it's a really good resolution. So thank you very much. I'm going to put this to the. Have you spoken yet, Ian? You can speak.
I think that, like Claire, I have an issue with the last part of the motion, which seems to be giving specific direction to staff, whereas the opening gambit of the motion is to investigate, but the second part seems to be giving specific instructions. And I guess my concern is that we as a council are in danger of buying into the sort of conspiracy theory about how dangerous nitrates are to human health, and that we don't seem to accept the WHO's recommendations, we don't seem to accept our own Ministry of Health recommendations, and we don't seem to accept the advice from some of our most senior health experts, such as Professor Frizzell, but we buy into advice from those people who sort of seem to be, in my view, running a political agenda. So if this motion is passed and we go ahead with it, and I've got no particular issue with nitrate testing, it's absolutely important that this council gives clear, unpolitically motivated advice as to what is health, what is good and what is bad, and that is not happening at the moment. And I think that is the black hole that we could fall into by running this type of operation without providing the balanced information on the side. Because I do know for a fact that in our area, you can easily whip up hysteria amongst people who are less well educated when it comes to understanding science, and you can talk through things with people and it calms them down. But people are really worried when they're told that nitrates over 1 part per million might kill them or their children. They get really worried. Now, that's clearly a lie. So there's a responsibility that goes with this type of operation, and I think we need to think about that, and our staff need to think about that should this motion be passed.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Southworth, you can speak.
Yeah. So I'll just talk to several of the points. The first point I will cover actually is Ian's and Claire's around pathogens and around the importance of giving really accurate, good quality, scientifically based information. And that's precisely the point which I believe I tried to put into here. It's not just about nitrate, it's about other aspects of water health and people being able to understand what is in their water, know what their personal responsibilities around testing, and being able to find information should they want to feel that it's important for them to treat the water, or that it gives them comfort that actually it's not bad, it's fine. So the very point of it being Environment Canterbury leading on this is that we can entirely achieve that, and it's not being run by an organisation that has a political motivation or agenda. So that, to speak to that one. In terms of talking about Selwyn and the OTOP zones, it's Liz, Councillor Mackenzie, and is on OTOP zone committee. I'm on the Selwyn Waihora zone committee. These events were really well attended, so there clearly was a desire to, a need for this in the community, and it was well received. So just to say, they've been driven along through zone committees where we've been pushing them. But that doesn't mean that all the zone committees will pick them up. And the point is to make sure that it's done even-handedly and that those areas that would benefit from this get that opportunity. And just to say to the motion, I'm quite happy to take out the specificity after bringing a report back, because I was just trying to be helpful to suggest some things. But of course, I accept that staff will know what to bring a report back to. So I don't know what the process is for me to do that, but I'm more than happy to do that if there's a process I can do to do it.
So I'll just intervene there. So are you saying you'd be prepared to accept and report back to council full stop?
Yeah.
Oh. And which bit are you going to cut out?
So I've specified that it should cover identifying prioritised areas for events, potential start dates, timelines, etc. Now, to my mind, if you're going to do a report, that the staff would put that in because that's what you need to know in order for the council needs to know that in order to make that decision. So
if you are happy to put the full stop in the new triennium, can you ask seconder, Councillor Elizabeth Mackenzie, are you happy with that too? Technically, we can't do that. Because it's a notice of motion. Yeah, we can move an amendment. Yeah. So we'll move an amendment then. So you can foreshadow an amendment. So you want to move an amendment then to do that?
yes, yeah.
All right. So oh God, I hope that we get new technology next term. I'm wishing it for you all. It does, you know, people focus censored ones. They can get that to find out if you're speeding now. I'm sure they can get it for microphones. Point of order. How did that happen? Oh, thank you. What's your point of order?
The person who puts the notice of motion make an amendment. I thought someone else had to make the amendment.
No, yes, they can, but you can amend it, but it can be amendment. They can't just do it by getting the seconder to agree. What does it say? Just tell me.
Mover.
Yeah.
So mover, and you've got to put it to the vote.
Yes,
so
and that's what we're doing. Yeah, I'm doing the right thing. I'm sorry, Elizabeth, your point of order is overruled and I am doing the right thing. So I'm going to read this motion onto the record because I don't think we have. That the council requests staff to investigate running a private well information roadshow across the region to include an indicative nitrate test and provision of information about other testing such as pathogens and pesticides, and report back to council in the new triennium, full stop. So your amendment is deleting the words identifying prioritised area for events, potential start date and timeline for delivery and costs. That is moved by Councillor. Can someone put it? It's moved by Vicky. That's the amendment, and seconded by Councillor Mackenzie. All those in favour, please say aye.
Sorry, Chair, there was just need to be an amendment to that.
No, it's just an error on screen. It's okay.
Error
They've
on the
got it.
screen.
They've got it.
Yep. Okay.
Let's get that on back on. Okay, that's carried. So now we're reverting back to the substantive motion, which has got those words deleted at the end. So we've had the speaker. You've spoken. Was there anybody else to speak? Elizabeth, you spoke, did you? You've spoken. Anybody else want to speak? All right, we're going to put it to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Who's opposed? Put your hand up if you're opposed. Okay, just John. Okay, so it's carried. Thank you very much. Rightio. That's very good. Thank you very much, everybody. We're moving on to page 9 of the agenda. It's number 7 and it's the minutes of the 28th of July. I'll move that from the chair. I'd like to ask Councillor John Sunkel if he will second it. Is there any problems with these minutes that people can see? I think we're just going to, do we want to do that by amendment or you just delete that? Yeah, she's already done that. Yeah. All right. Anything else about the minutes that anyone's spotted? All right. Well, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. I don't think anybody's against that, so I'll declare it carried. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. We're on page 17 of 112. It's 8.1. This is the Chief Executive's report. I'll just ask Stephanie to say a few words about it, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, just 2 items to update with regard to the public forum from the Kakahu residents. I have updated you in a previous report, but since then we've provided a briefing to you as council, and there's currently progress being made with the Kakahu residents, and I expect a final letter will be provided to them. Similarly then, with regard to the other public forum, Mr. Martin Mertens on the 10th of August, particularly with regard to silage pit placement, and he provided us with some suggestions. We have certainly thanked thanked him for the information and the presentation, and we pointed him to the website in terms of where that information is available. We're also reviewing and assessing whether a new implementation program should be added to our work program. And if it goes ahead, we will obviously look to that education and awareness campaign with which Mr. Mertens put forward, and we would certainly go back to him on that. Chair, that is the end of my report.
Thank you very much to the CEO. I'd just like to note that if you have a look on page 18's next steps, number 10, staff have actually said that they will update on further outcomes to the 22nd of September. So that's really good. All those in favour, please say aye. Oh, I haven't got anyone to move it. Claire, would you like to move it? Councillor Mackay has moved it. Who would like to second it? Seconded by Councillor Grant Edge. All those in favour, please say aye. I don't think anybody's against it. Excellent work, and thank you very much to all the staff who have been involved, really stepping up there, I think, with these, with the community coming in. So I think it's really fantastic work. So thank you very much. It's excellent. It's carried. Page number 19 of 112, 8.2, previous council minutes and activities. This is another really good innovation. It's fantastic. I'd like to move that from the chair, seconded by, who would like to second it? Councillor Lan Phan. Any issues with this update of that's provided here? No, it's not provided. It's Plan Change 7 Appeals Committee. It's just telling the public that we did it. So that's, I'll put that to the vote. All of those in favour? Anybody opposed? There's nobody opposed. That's carried. I just check that you've read the next steps there, everybody, on page 20. We're up to page 21, 8.3, Council Resolution Status Report. Another very good initiative. Who would like to move this? Moved by Councillor Lan Phan, seconded by Councillor Elizabeth Mackenzie. Has anybody got any questions or anything they'd like to raise about this report? Everyone's happy with it? Claire?
Yeah, I just was inquiring as to the entry for Kainga, which is on the bottom of page 25, and just wondering around that public release, knowing that there has been an opening of building, is that actually completed, or is there still further completion of that project?
Thank you, Councillor Mackay. Based on the information through the chair as well, reviewed for March 2023, because we do need to check on progress with regard to that. So I'll come back to council with greater clarity, but thank you for raising it and pointing it out.
That's a really good question to ask, Councillor Mackay. It's a really good way to use these resolutions. So thank you. So it's moved by Councillor Lan Phan, seconded by Councillor Elizabeth Mackenzie. All those in favour, please say aye. I don't think there's anybody opposed, so that's carried. Thank you very much. We're on page 31 of 112. That's 8.4, continuation of certain committees. Did we need to get Catherine? Maybe we'll get you to have a speak to it if you don't mind.
Hello, Koto. This is the second leg and a double. You saw the first part of last meeting. And this focuses on making sure that committees that need to stay in place continue past the election date. And that's necessary because the Local Government Act says that if you don't make that resolution, then all of your committees are deemed to be discharged at the election. You'll see that we've worked through all of the council's committees and identified some where resolutions have already been made, some where resolutions aren't necessary, some where there's particular statutory provisions, and then we're left with those that are identified in the resolutions that we're recommending to you ought to be carrying on past the election date. Now, that doesn't mean that if there's an elected member on the committee and the elected member isn't standing or isn't re-elected, that they somehow get to continue having any power after the election. It simply means that anybody who's on those committees who's not elected does stay in post. And then, of course, after the election, one of the first papers that we brought back to you in November will be to consider the committee structure and membership of those committees for the new triennium.
got any questions for Catherine? Because I think it's really good to understand this for the new term. Councillor Elizabeth McKenzie.
Sorry, I didn't flag this earlier, but it just popped into my head. The Regulation Hearing Committee. So that's going to continue, but most of the people on that committee are current councillors. So how does that sort of work in practice then?
In the past, I've described it a wee bit as being like a bus. What you're resolving today is that the bus route will continue and that bus will continue on its trundling way past the election. There just won't be very many people sitting on the bus after that election date. And so one of the first things that the council will need to do at the November meeting is to make resolutions around who should be back on that bus. Forgive the poor metaphor.
They could actually tuck a couple of people off the bus too if they so decided. Anyway, anything else? No, it might be good in public. Any other questions for Catherine while we've got her there? All right, look, I want to congratulate staff. It's all very clear and you've done a good collection, and I know the governance people have been collecting up every sort of committee we've got across the whole council, so it's going to be very comprehensive. So thanks very much for that work. I think that's all. Thanks, Catherine. Who would like to move this resolution? Councillor Lan Farn, seconded by Councillor Claire Mackay. Saw you first, then I turned away. All those in favour, please say aye. That's carried. Thank you very much. That's great. Really good to be clear. Page 37 of 112.8.5, which is Local Government Members Determination 2022. Catherine, maybe we need you to come to the table again and just have a little talk about that report. I think that'd be good.
Kia ora anō. You'll remember, and this will feel a little bit like Groundhog Day, that you've relatively recently considered paper making changes to the REM determination. That was because we were a little tardy in bringing that to you. In the interim, the REM authority has come out with its new determination, and there's changes proposed based on that determination. As you'll see, they focus on the mileage rates and also on a new permitted allowance for what's tagged as ICT consumables, information, communication and technology, thank you, Nicole, consumables of up to $200. We will pick up and expand on that acronym so that I don't trip over it again in the future, and so that it's clear in the policy for the next year.
Has anybody got any questions about this paper? Because it is really good to understand it all. No? So the communications allowance has improved slightly. Good one to keep your eye on going forward, because I don't know that that allowance there really covers, especially for rural councillors. It's a real issue that we should be pushing for. I think that as a councillor you should be actually provided with, ongoing connections to the digital, communication systems. I don't know that it totally should be something that's left to your job as a private contractor. I think it was much better if you actually had that guaranteed. I don't see how you're supposed to do democracy properly these days without that. And I think it's something that needs to be pushed with the remuneration authority so that they get that clear. I think it actually works proactively against democracy. That's my view of it. And it's an evolving area, so we should be keeping an eye on it. All right. Who would like to move this? Councillor Clearwater. Who's going to second it? Councillor Vicky Southworth. All those in favour, please say aye. Anybody against? There being nobody against, that's carried. Thank you very much, Catherine, for all your work and supporting the council on this. And might be one of the last jobs you do for us, seeing you going off and being promoted to another organisation. So we'll have more of that at the next meeting, I hope. Councillor Peter Scott's just left the meeting, so we'll just note that. What are we up to? We're up to page 51 of 112. That is delegation under section 91 of the Building Act. Has anybody got any questions about this report? Oh, we better get the people who are going to represent this report. Would you like to come back to the table, Catherine? I think it's you. And Kate. Maybe Kate, if you just give us a little, oh, Catherine will probably tell you to do this anyway. So over to you two.
Kia ora anō. With me is Kate Rutherford. Kate is currently, yes, the Building Consents Administrator at ECan. She's had the role for some time, but has recently moved to a new role. So is currently in the process of backfilling her role with a new person. We're bringing this paper to you today because a recent audit identified that there was a gap in the beloved Delegations manual dealing with this particular situation under the Building Act. And the gaps arisen because earlier this council decided to take on responsibility for other councils, and we hadn't made that specific delegation that allowed somebody other than you to decide whether that was appropriate. So it's really a bit of a gap filler and a fix that we need to make sure we keep a good audit grade, and also, of course, that we make decisions under the Building Act properly.
Did you want to fill us in with anything else, Kate, or has Catherine done a real good job?
Kia ora. No, I think that pretty much sums it up. It really arises out of a general non-compliance that was identified by IANZ, who comes and does audits every 2 years of the BCA function. So it's responding to that GNC and just making sure that we've got the correct delegations in place.
John, you've got a question.
Just so the clarity is, you have the same delegations that you had before for the actions that fall out of Environment Canterbury. This new authorisation provides you those same delegations to give effect to actions that might fall out of Otago or whoever else. Extension or change.
Correct. Yeah.
Just like John, just seeking clarification. Is there any additional risk or liability to Environment Canterbury through formalising this, or is it just formalising a status quo? There were risks when the council took on the role of being the BCA for the other councils. Those risks were addressed at that time. There's no additional risk in doing this. In fact, it's the reverse. By having the clear delegation to the BCA to make these decisions, we're removing a risk that somebody might say you hadn't properly authorised those decisions to be made at that level.
Thank you very much. Councillor Vicky Southworth.
I just want to clarify that I'm fully understanding what the process is here. So a dam is designed and then it gets given building consent and building approval, and that's, in this case, some of those have been done by other regional councils, not us. And normally the same regional council would then give code compliance, which is to say it was built in accordance with the design, and then you're checking that. So here, is there any? You've said there is no risk, and I'm just wondering if ultimately another organisation has said this is a design and this is the consent that goes with it, and we're confident that that will be a suitable design and it ticks all the boxes. But now we're coming in and saying yes, it's been built that way, but we're not reviewing whether we're happy with the original consent and its conditions. Is that correct? And that's where I sort of feel like, is there really not an additional risk? Because what if that first consent wasn't actually, if we had done it, we would have required something different? I guess that's the question. Yeah, there is an additional risk there. And as I said, that additional risk was taken on board when we took on these functions. The paper before you today is simply about who within ECan can decide to do that, having already agreed as a council that we would do it for Environment Southland and for Otago Regional Council and Westland. So the marginal risk today is nil. It's actually an improvement. The decisions around the risk that we were taking on in taking on consent processing and in taking on code compliance issuing was assessed at that time.
Did I see somebody else with their hand up, or was that it? All right, well, we might see who would like to move this, please. Is anybody, Councillor Lam Farm, seconded by Councillor Grant Edge. Would anybody like to, oh, thank you very much. You can leave the table now. Thank you for coming. Is there anybody wanting to speak to this? Okay, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. I don't think there's anybody against, and staff are doing very good work and they explained that well, so that's carried. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop the meeting now just a wee bit early because we need to eat some food and it's not, there's a couple more things to do. So I anticipate there's only about another, well, depends how long, it could be an hour, but I think we'll stop. All right, everybody, I think we might make a start here. Have we got everybody at the table? I think so. Yes, good. Thank you for checking. All right, everyone online, you can hear Yayan? Great, I see your little thumb. It's a rather good tool, isn't it? Thank you. We're up to page 56 of 112, item 6.7, submission to LINZ on, or 8.7, sorry, I've got dyslexia. Submission to LINZ on the Crown Pastoral Land Regulations and Standards. And I'll ask Cecilia to come to the table. Thank you for pulling this together. Really hard job you've got there, but you do a splendid job. So over to you to talk, give us a bit of a talk about it.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, Council. Yeah, so the purpose of this item is to seek approval of a submission to LINZ on their proposed Crown Pastoral Land Regulations and Standards. I'll largely take the paper and submission as read. LINZ have developed these regulations and standards for the Commissioner of Crown Land and LINZ Chief Executive to support the implementation of the new Crown Pastoral Land Reform Act and support better management of Crown land. During the select committee process for the Crown Pastoral Land Reform Act, Council supported the intent of this Act to improve outcomes in the High Country. Given the current proposals focus on LINZ implementation of the Act, the submission is largely technical in nature, based on experience and includes practical suggestions that LINZ should cover in the implementation of these regulations. The submission also focuses on how Environment Canterbury, LINZ and other regulatory agencies can work together to achieve consistency in decision making and implementation, and what processes could support that. So staff across science, operations and strategy and planning supported the development of this draft submission. Submission was circulated to Council also for feedback and no feedback was received. And also just to note that the submission isn't the only avenue to advocating and working with LINZ on how LINZ and Environment Canterbury can continue to work together towards consistent and effective implementation of land management, and the submission will be used as a basis for staff to have such conversations with LINZ. So ahead of the consultation closing date tomorrow, Friday 19 August, Council approval of this draft submission is sought. And following that, Chair's signature will be sought and submission lodged with LINZ and uploaded on the Council website.
Right, thank you, Cecilia. Has anybody got any questions they'd like to ask or anything they'd like to check around what Cecilia's just said? Yes, Councillor Mackenzie.
Yeah, just a question. How does this mesh in with the flood management and flood protection for these high country areas? If you can't answer, that's fine. I'm happy to hear later on it. But yeah.
Yes, I might have to come back with you on that one. Yeah, the Rivers team was sort of involved in the drafting of the submission and haven't flagged anything in this context of these regulations, but yeah, I can come back to you on that.
Right, anybody else wish to ask a question? I'd just be interested to know in terms of the reform of the Resource Management Act, and you're saying there's duplication here with these, is that being correlated across to our input into the RMA reform pieces of legislation as well.
In terms of, I mean, I guess referring to like the second bullet point of the submission, that's a point we've made about, you know, sort of making sure that the policy intent of the regulations sort of duplicate over and using the Te Mana o Te Wai example there, and that in the Reform Act there is a provision for consideration of national policy direction in terms of the Commissioner's decision making. So that's probably the avenue there. Yeah.
I just wonder if I could ask the CE, is there anything you could say about that, given your role on the ministerial committee around, you know, coordinating this across the reform areas? That'd be really good if you could.
Thank you, through you, Chair. My suggestion to Council would be that this submission is put in on the basis of what is before you. And then once those two pieces of legislation are actually in the House, we ensure that what we've put here aligns then with what we might submit into the future. And I'm sure staff will be willing to do that.
Sounds really good. So thanks very much for that. And I think that one of the good things we've done this term is right from the start, having that oral policy where we do make submissions to these major ones and appear before the select committee as a priority. I hope that that continues, because I think that's been really good and very well supported by staff, how we've been able to do that. And I think it really it's really good in how our advocacy requirements or tools under the Local Government Act can fit in with that tool for consultation from the Parliament down. So thank you very much to all the staff who've helped with that, and especially you for pulling them together. But everybody else, all the experts have been great. So thank you. Right, anything else? No? All right, Councillor Lan Farm. Oh, yes. Yeah, you go next. Comment. You can do that.
Yeah, no, thank you for this. Really good and succinct. But I just wanted to emphasise I'm really glad to see us continually picking up the recognition and also advocating for the interests of Ngāi Tahu, and really, you know, like really good to see that in everything we're doing, and keep going. Thank you.
Else like to make a comment or just a little speech or anything? Yeah, Nicole.
Kia ora, Cecilia. Thank you and your team for an excellent submission. I think the fact that you didn't hear much back from us just speaks to the strength of what you've put together. So just a massive thank you and congratulations for what you guys have done.
Speak. I don't even think I've got the resolution up yet, but anyway, we're doing it this way at the moment. Grant.
Just quickly, just the bullet point, the last bullet point about just ensuring that LINZ or suggesting that LINZ provides sufficient funding for the implementation of projects to improve environmental outcomes, which is one of the points of the NBA. So that's a bit of alignment there.
Good point, thanks. Anybody else wanting to say anything? Okay, who's going to move this up? Councillor Lan Farm, seconded by Nicole Marshall. All those in, thank you very much, Cecilia. Sorry, I'm chasing you away. Sorry about that. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Anybody opposed? There being nobody opposed, that's carried. Well, thank you. You're a bit of a star as far as this is concerned, I think. Right, we're up to 8.8, 62 of 112. I'd like to ask our Chief Scientist, Fiona Shanahan, to come to the table, please, Fiona, for climate emergency update. Actually, we don't hear from you much, so it's really good to have you at the table and to hear about anything you want to tell us, really, about climate change would be good. It's a pretty wide brief I'm giving in. But yeah.
Kia ora koutou, and thank you, Chair, for that huge opportunity. How much time have we got? I will stick to this month's climate emergency update, which highlights some examples of successful planting projects that have either been led through community groups through funding from Environment Canterbury, or others that have been led by council staff themselves. So this work links to our strategic direction through our transformational opportunities to accelerate regeneration of the natural environment, to build community engagement and action, and to lead climate change resilience. Over the last month, Environment Canterbury staff and more than 150 local volunteers have planted around about 1,800 native plants in various areas, including McLean's Island, Pointers Wetland, and the Ashley Wakahuri. Now, while climate change was not the main driver for these planting projects, they do deliver a range of co-benefits in relation to climate change. Some of these benefits include carbon sequestration, and there are also benefits for biodiversity, conservation and pest control, as well as providing an opportunity to engage with community groups. And of particular note, given the increased frequency of heavy rainfall events that we're already seeing, additional tree planting helps to stabilise riverbanks and reduce sediment losses on erosion-prone sites. Our biosecurity parks and forests team runs large-scale volunteer planting projects each year. And through those projects, they oversee the planting of as many as 10,000 native plants into various reserves across the region. These projects typically involve around 1,000 volunteers and members of the community each year. So it's really wonderful to see communities getting involved, and it's a great opportunity for us to raise awareness of our work. The planting events are co-facilitated by external partners, local schools and smaller community groups, and we really value and celebrate the contribution of those organisations to restoring and enhancing the natural environment of Waitaha, Canterbury. There are another 10 planting days scheduled over the next few months, so we look forward to hearing more about the success of those planting days in due course. Kia ora.
All right, has there anybody who'd like to make a comment? Councillor Elizabeth Mackenzie.
Yeah, I just want to say that I am really proud of the work that we're doing in this area. I've been on a couple of these tree planting things. I went to the Pastoral one last weekend, and there had also been plantings where school groups had come in to do plantings, and it was a really great learning experience for them as well. And also the plantings that are being done really, they do weather the floods quite well. They're plants that actually yeah. So yeah, I think it's really great. Thank you.
Anybody else would like to make a comment, ask a question, speak to it, do anything really? Councillor Phil Clearwater.
I'd just like to thank staff for leading this work too. I agree with Councillor Mackenzie that I've been involved in a couple of the planting projects and lower mid-Heskett and upper Heskett, and it's just amazing how people, neighbours come along and contribute. And notwithstanding the flooding that's just affected the mid-Heskett too, it's wonderful that the plants have withstood that extra water. So I just think it's a great result, for people's well-being, but also for the environment. So thank you, Fiona.
Councillor Vicky Southworth.
Yeah, just also like to just add my appreciation for all of this, and it's so good to see that connection between climate change action, biodiversity improvement, and also community engagement and education. So it's just, it's just like the perfect sweet spot that brings them all together. So yeah, great, and good. Look forward to seeing much more of this over the years to come. Thank you.
Anybody else wanting to speak? I think it's fantastic, and sometimes during this term I've wondered if tree planting is the only thing we should be doing, and everybody should be doing it, because it is advocacy through action, and it's very good for community well-being, and it does something actually that helps about climate change. So I think it's fantastic, and it's really important that we continue to facilitate that through the ground groups up, because that's helping our council deliver what we should be delivering under the 4 wellbeings in the LGA. So congratulations to all the staff and everybody who's done it. It's fantastic. Councillor Ian Mackenzie.
Well, I'm not commenting on the great work you're doing, but I will comment on the comment you just made, Chair Jenny, and that people are doing lots of planting, and the Rari Nursery has a sale every spring, late winter, maybe it's in the autumn, can't remember, it's the last couple of months, where they have something like 100,000 plants for sale, and they always sell out after 3 days, and that's almost exclusively bought by rural landowners who then don't have 150 people turn up to do the planting for them, but actually have to plant them themselves, and then have to weed them themselves and look after them themselves on their own private land. So I think we could give credit to those people as well.
Thank you, and that's ditto in the city as well. In fact, what's happening is more and more people are turning up to plant than there is plants, so it's a fantastic outcome. Okay, who's going to move this? Moved by Councillor. Thanks, Fiona. Councillor Vicky Southworth, seconded by Councillor Phil Clearwater. All those in favour, please say aye. Anybody opposed? Not being anybody opposed, that's carried. Thank you very much. Now, 8.9 has been withdrawn. So I'm going to move from the chair that we move into public excluded. Who would like to second that? Seconded by Councillor John Sunkel. All those in favour, please say aye. Anybody opposed? Not being anybody opposed, we're in public excluded. We're in public meeting again. We're going to finish with a Karakia. Oh, the next meeting, hold on, I've got it on here, the 22nd of September. Councillor Phil Clearwater, what have you?
I probably misunderstood, Chair, but I just wondered the item on the public transport withdrawn. Oh, that one's withdrawn too. I see. As well. Sorry.
You might have missed it, Phil. We had to withdraw it. Would you like to say something?
Just to clarify for councillors, when we did the briefing the other day, did note that due to the current status of the NTS with Whakamutunga, that I had asked this paper to be removed until the next council meeting so that I could be fully comfortable that it was before you at the right time and with the right information.
Yeah, thanks for confirming that, Stephanie. There's so much going on. We need to. Yeah, that's right.
Fair enough.
Well, there is a lot going on. It's really busy. All right, so the next meeting is going to have a couple of reports from this one on it then, so it's going to be a bit of a full agenda. It'll be the last one for the triennium, and it's on the 22nd of September. And then we would like to finish with a closing Karakia, a Mihi if we like, or just say you do it, Grant. It's up to you.
Karakia. Inuhia, 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 Kiti Uru Tapanui, Tapanui Otane, Kia Watia, Kia Mama, Tinako, Ti Tinana, Ti Wairua, Te Ara Takata, Koya Irongu, Whaka Ira, Ki Runga, Kia Tina, Umiai, Uiai Tahi.
Thank you very much, Grant. Thank you all. That's the close of the meeting.